very pleased to be here to talk to you today and hopefully for many times in the future on primarily entrepreneurship, small business ownership, and how you can prevent failures in these areas. I was born in London when bombs were dropping. I never really saw my father till the age of 6 when he came back from war. So in those days money was scarce, so we had to really fend for ourselves. And I used to make my money by having a newspaper around and delivering newspapers, etc. And I was asked the other day by a course I was doing, and someone said, what was your first entrepreneurial acquisition? And I did some thinking, and I remembered now as well, I went to a road one day and saw these tortoises in the garden. So I stole 4 tortoises, put them in a sack, and took them to another road and sold them for 5 shillings each. So I made myself £1, which in those days was a lot of money. But my father found out. I was beaten to pulp, if you like, and I had to give back the tortoises and give back the money. So that was my first experience of buying something. Secondly, what was very interesting about it, the whole thing was then, one of the class said, but it wasn't that your first insolvency, because now you had gone bust and you had to go back to selling newspapers. So it was a very interesting experience for me. But that message was one I've used for the rest of my life, and that is, be honest with yourself, honest with others, and don't be afraid to speak your mind. And I've always used that as an example to all the classes I teach in entrepreneurship, that those words are important. Crime is one of the biggest threats to small businesses today. So I started virtually in my career as a criminal. But later on, after being around in odd jobs, I became a young policeman in London. I was what they call a bobby on the beat. I learned more about people than I've ever learned. I did play a lot of soccer for various amateur teams in England. And then when I was 20, I was bored. I thought, I want to go to see the world. So I ended up in Malawi as a young police inspector. I had 10 wonderful years there. But when I arrived there, I had no education. I left school at 14. I had to fend for myself at the age of 14. And so I suddenly realized, being out in the colonial system, I had to really do something. So I got my O-levels, my A-levels, my LLB, and I became a barrister at law, the same as the advocate in this country, all within a period of about 5 or 6 years. I then came down to South Africa. I was appointed as legal advisor to SAPI, the paper people. And from that time, for the last 25 years or so, I've been very heavily always involved in law, but very much putting deals together. So from the beginning, always talking about buying this, buying that, selling that, how you must conduct yourself in business, and so forth. And in 1984, when the whole system was changed in this country, I suddenly realized an enormous market was going to be teaching primarily black people how to go into business, because they had been denied education. They had not had this knowledge, and the schools were not teaching it. In fact, education was denied virtually for the whole time. So I started my training on entrepreneurship, business training from that day, and it's always been a passion of mine to help people when they go into business. But what does horrify me at the moment is, I've been reading articles recently, and why I've suddenly really got back into this whole business of going into entrepreneurship is that 60% of small businesses fail in the first year, and 80% or so fail by the second year. My objective is very simple: to try to stop those people failing. And what I'm trying to do now, most of the courses, I always start with, well, who is in business? And I did a course recently at a university. There were 40 plus young graduates there, had their own businesses. And I said, well, look, stand up those who are not doing well. And everyone stood up. So I said, well, why is this so? And the answer was, well, we thought we knew business. We went into business. We jumped into business too quick. We left school. We went straight into a business ourselves. We hadn't been in the corporate world, so we didn't really understand how business operated. We'd read a lot of books which we thought we understood and we didn't know. So frankly, the reason we failed is because we did not understand business. We did not understand cash is king and a whole lot of things like that. My biggest concern after all these attitudes and apartheid in this country and so forth was that we've got to educate people. And in 1994, I really saw a need now for people who have been denied education in the past, to give them a chance now to come into the business world, Sure, education had to come into play, but I really saw that was the beginning of a change in this country from a business perspective. But as I've said, and you'll pick it up later on, is to this day, we're still having too many failures in small businesses, and we've got to have a look at it again. We've got to look at school, how schools are dealing with education, how businesses are helping people coming into business for the first time, and all those are areas which I just like to get clear in the next few years. It's an area which tremendous opportunities in this country, but why so many failures? And that's the answer we're going to try to do in all these workshops, etc., these talks the next few months, to really try to understand where are the failures, how can we prove it, where are the risks, where are the rewards, and hopefully we can build up a very dynamic entrepreneurial spirit in this country to the benefit of all. Because of the lack of education, I decided that we must really go deep, and I'll repeat it because it was an enormous great area, and I suddenly realized where were people coming unstuck? They were reading books which they didn't understand, perhaps too academic, and I'm not knocking the academics, but the learnerships had to be in a way which was practical and they could understand them. I use the word, it must be simple, it must be practical, and no jargon or legalese. And I was asked the other day on a workshop, what is the definition of jargon? So I myself was using jargon, and the word jargon means words or phrases used by professional people which the man in the street does not understand. And so I've tried to keep to that theme. I've really 7 points of teaching people how to go into business. So my real interest has been to say, now, what are the major points of going into business, especially for the first time? And there's an expression we use so often called cash is king. If you've got money, you can hopefully survive. It's a very loose word, cash is king. I believe the word annuity, cash annuity, where you've got a salary every month. Small business owners sometimes don't make money for 6 months, and then they could do well or they go insolvent, etc. So cash is king is important, but it's got to be cash flow, which I think is a better word. Information is power is the next one. If you haven't got the information, you don't know who your competitors are, you're going to go out of business. A lot of people get mixed up between profit and revenue. If you do not know the difference between profit and revenue, you're going to come unstuck. Profit is sanity, turnover is vanity. A big area of concern of mine has been the phrase I use, let the signer beware. It's amazing how many people sign documents they do not understand. When you go into business, you go to the bank, you lend money, you have to sign what is a suretyship. Now, suretyships have Latin phrases in there. People do not understand them. The banks don't explain them. And it's amazing people will sign things they don't understand. And it's too late if you've signed it and the deal goes through, you are in trouble. So I put that as one of my biggest things, let the signer beware. I've written books on this and I've always highlighted let the signer beware. The next point I think is very important. Every time you go to a meeting, you should talk to the other people and put in writing what you've agreed. And next meeting, go there. You can call them minutes, you can call them notes, but you go there and sign off what you've agreed. If you don't do it this way, the party will say, no, we never agreed that. And if it's not in writing, it's your word against theirs. Another area which I think is very, very important is always have a witness. When you're going to any meetings in your own business, always have a witness, because if you end up in court for some case, whatever it is, always two voices are better than one. And I strongly push that one. People say to me, okay, I want to go into business, and we will cover all these things again later, but I say, well, wait a minute. What do you know about business? The answer is, well, we don't know because we've never been in business. So how do we start? And that's starting a business. It's so difficult to get people to understand the basics. Why do people not understand it? No education to start with. Even when the education comes in, it's too technical, so that people still don't understand it. So I'm trying to go into other areas where I say, well, when you go into, you've got a job, you're earning a reasonable salary. Why do you want to go into your own business? Keep your job, start your other business in your own time, weekends, and as you build up, you can suddenly realize, wait a minute, I'm doing well now. I'm going to leave the job and I'm going to now go into my own business. Don't rush in. I really am concerned about people jumping straight into business and they're coming unstuck. We will talk during this course about a concept called entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship is a person who is an employee, works for a company, but he has entrepreneurial ideas. Now, that entrepreneur is in a comfort zone working for another company because he now gets a salary every month, so he doesn't have to worry about that. He knows he can go on leave. He comes up with ideas, and he knows if they're good, they're recognized, and he can make more money. And that area we will cover again. But at the moment, I think the biggest problem is that jumping in too soon. Slowly catch a monkey is the right expression, and I think that's very, very important. Okay?